So, welcome everyone to today's webinar, where I'm going to be leading you through a brand new feature that is available to you inside of the Mangomint platform. I'm talking about resource scheduling. It's great. We have a big audience today. A lot of people joining. Hey, Taylor, Kimberly. Just actually out of curiosity, so for everyone who's joining right now, if you just want to put in the chat what type of business you run and where you're located, it's just nice to get a bit of feeling for who we have on the call today. Med Spa, Upper Michigan, awesome. Kimberly, welcome to the call today. And so while you pop that in, also, if you haven't met me before, my name is John Hallberg, and I'm responsible for content at Mangomint, as well as over at the salonbusiness.com. And I'm really excited to lead you through what I'm going to share with you today. The new feature, resource scheduling, has only been out for a couple of days, but I've seen some great response from the Mangomint community on this feature. So it's going to be a pleasure just to kind of dive into that today and to show you what's coming. So that's really my goal with the session that we have today, is to lead you through resource scheduling so that you have what you need in order for you to get set up and working with resource scheduling. So I'm going to be sharing my screen. I'm going to show you how you can set up resources, how you manage resources. And I will do this by kind of walking you through three common ways or scenarios of how we work with resources. And just to give you like top line, so the first one we will look at is when we have a service that is dependent on a resource being available, how do we set up these resources to avoid that they get double booked and so on, and that we now allocate them for the service that is being booked. So that's the first one we will go through and do together. Following that, we will also look at the cases when actually the resource is the service itself. So if we have like a sauna or what's it called, like a pod or a spa or something like that, where actually the sauna itself is the service and we don't require staff. So like, how do we set that up? And then the third case we will also look at is how can we use resources and schedule resources to control the availability of our services. If we have cases where like we have a service that we only want to have available on Mondays and Tuesdays and not the rest of the week, we can use resources for that as well. So those are the like three cases we're going to go through. It's going to make more sense as I open up the platform and we start looking at it. And I will leave time for the Q&A, so like drop them in the chat. I see there's fire in the chat happening right now as well. So keep that momentum up. I see we have massage spa, Salon in Washington, nail spa in Seattle area. Welcome, Casey. Muse and Maven Lash Beauty Studio in Port Moody. Okay. Massage parlor. Wow. Med spa. Okay. Exciting. So we have a really great group on the call today. So yeah, like keep the chat going, leave any questions there. I'll make sure to come back to that towards the end of this session as well. What I want to say before we just open up, and I'm going to be diving into Mangomint with you, is that I know that some of you who are here today are already using resources within Mangomint. So are using a previous version of resources, which with this new feature that we're launching now, the intent is, of course, to replace that, right? But so for those of you who are working with resources today, our support team will be reaching out to you proactively, if they haven't done so already, to make sure you have the support you need in order to transfer from your current way of working into the new way of working that I'm showing you today. So, we're going to reach out to you. But that is, even like from what you're seeing today, as we walk through it, you can start. Even if you're working with the existing previous version of resources, you can start, working with the new ones, setting that up. It's just that it will not take effect until you've spoken to our support team and we've kind of flicked the switch and make sure that you're moved over properly to the new setup. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. I'm going to share my screen with you. Let's see if that is loading. Move you over to this one. Can you see my calendar here right now? Good. All right. So Let's dive in. Perfect. Thank you, everyone. So yeah, just before we actually start working with resources, what I want to say is also resources, as you kind of, start using Mangomint, is not enabled by default. So you actually, to start using resources, we need to go into settings, and you need to go to business setup, go to the feature manager and scroll down. So this is where we can control, which features are switched on and off inside of Mangomint. So you need to go down to resource scheduling and make sure you have that toggled on. So, we need to do that first in order to start working with it. Another thing to be aware of also, like a basic setting, is just like if you want to control, who of your member of staff should be able to see resources and should be able to manage that, you will control that on the staff members. And you go into the member of staff and you go to permissions, and there's a section down here as well on resources that you find here where you can set up, if this person can manage resources and can view resources on the calendar. So that's just like some basic setup before we can start working with resources. But so the first thing that I want to do now is actually just to add a resource in, show you how we do that. So let's go into settings, and then you go down to resources that you see here. And as you come in here, so I'm just starting blank because I'm assuming most of you will be doing that as well. So I'm, just going to create this from scratch. So in order to add a resource, what we need to do first is to add a resource group. So all our resources are grouped. So that could be, a resource could be rooms, or it could be, equipment or beds, or, whatever type of business you run and whatever resources you have. So we need to start with creating a group. So I thought for this first use case that I want to show you is just more like a standard one. When we have a service that is dependent on a resource, a very common resource would be a room, right? So let's add a resource group called rooms in here. So now we have that group available, and then we can start adding in resources. So maybe I'll add let's say I add a massage room, maybe massage room 1 if I have 2. So I'll add that, and then I'll add another one, massage room 2. All right, so now we've added 2 massage rooms under our resources. So let's just look at some of the settings here. So the first thing that you will need to configure when you set up a resource is the appointment capacity for this resource. So is this a resource that, if this is booked with an appointment, then it's taken basically, no one else can use this resource? Or is it a resource that has capacity for several appointments to use at the same time? So for example, here we're setting up a room, right? And if it's a massage room, I'm assuming now it's going to be just for one appointment, but it could be a bigger room where you can accept several appointments at the same time, right? And then you would go there and give it a capacity, or you can set it to no limit as well. But we'll go into the use case where that could be relevant in a bit, but let's just set this to set up one appointment. You can then control when this resource will be available. And we're going to go into this in a bit, but for now, let's just leave it as always available. So given it's a room, it's always there. It's not going anywhere. So we're just going to say this room is always available. Same settings would apply to room 2 here, following the same. So there we go. That's the first resource we've created. We created a resource group rooms with 2 different massage rooms in here. So if we want to then add this to a service, we'll just go into our services. So I'll head over to settings and services. So let's say we wanted to add, to our massage treatments maybe. Where do we have it? So let's say for the Swedish massage, let's use that example here. In order to then set up this resource requirement. So we want to make sure when someone books a Swedish massage, that there's a resource available for us, that there's a room available for us. So we'll add that resource requirement in here on the service. So you just go resources, add required resources, select the group. Right now we only have one group, right? So I'll just select rooms. And then you can say, do you want all resources that are available inside of rooms? Meaning like as long as there's one room available, this service can be booked and the appointment will then take one of the rooms. Or do you want to have specific resources? So let's say maybe here we had a bunch of rooms, maybe we had 2 massage rooms, and maybe there was some other treatment room or something, right? Then we only want to select, of course, that this should be for a massage room setup, or maybe we have whatever different features in the different rooms. But let's say we toggle both these on, which basically means that this service can be booked as long as there's either massage room 1 or massage room 2 is available. Then we can book it, and it will pick one of the rooms for us. If we were to leave it at all resources, it also means like if we add more resources into this resource group later on, that will automatically then be one of the available resources that could be selected when booking the service. So we're going to be more specific here and specify the 2. So that is basically how we set up the resources and add them to a service. Let's now look at how this works then on the calendar if I'm booking one of these. So I'm going to go and say let's add myself maybe, and I'll select the Swedish massage that we added this room requirement on. And you can see when I selected the Swedish massage service here, it automatically says using massage room 1, right? And I can even tap that and say, no, I would prefer that it goes into which room would I prefer to use for it. But it, because that has been assigned to the service, it picks up that resource and suggests room 1 here to use because that is available. So let's go and I'll just book that appointment in. So we now have that on the calendar. And what we can do also is to view our resources on the calendar itself. And in order to do that, we'll go up to filters here. So by default, our calendar shows all staff. But we could also toggle on all staff and rooms, since we've added this rooms category here. And then we'll actually see our rooms and how they are available. And if I'm in here and I'm, moving a appointment that has the resource attached to it, you'll see how kind of that resource moves with me, right? Because it's tied to that specific appointment. And let's say I wanted to then add in, I'm going to book another one. Let's just pick some of the example clients I have in here. Let's do another Swedish massage. You'll see now when I added that, it automatically picked, room 2, because obviously room 1 is already taken, and I can see that on my calendar. Let's just book that in. So yeah, that's how we would do it. If what we could do, so we can actually change, which I just think is a cool feature. So we could change the room here as we saw before by just switching here. Another way that we could do it is also if we select and actually, so let's move this one down so we have a bit of moving space, and save the changes. So if I have this one selected, I could even also move the resource from room 1 here into room 2, and you'll see how that is then updated on this appointment, and I could save. So if I wanted to do that visually, obviously you could just work with this little drop down as well. But it's nice to have this visual view, I find, of the available resources, and you can just drag and drop and use that in there. So I'm just looking at if there's any questions in the chat as we go along as well. To stop quickly on this before we move into the next use case. Yeah, so cool to see the resource available. I agree, this is super helpful. And will clients be able to book a room in online booking? So naturally, like in the case we just looked at now, when someone books a Swedish massage in online booking, they will book the room then that is associated with that, right? Even if they don't really see that. And actually now in the next use case, we'll go through how you can have a resource that is the service itself. And I think that's probably more what this question is going at. Like if I have a resource like a sauna, for example, we can actually make sure that clients can book that specific resource online, using online booking. So I think that's what the question is going at. So let's actually go into the next use case, and I'll show you how that works. So we've now seen how we can create a service that has a resource attached to it that is needed as we book. The next one is if we, let's say, then have a service that doesn't require a member of staff. The service itself is just the resource. So again, a sauna could be a good example of that. So let's just go in and we'll add another resource group here. And I'll call that saunas. Maybe we have several of them. And we can add a sauna in here. Maybe we call it the steam room. Maybe we have more saunas, but we can just leave it at one now for now. That's fine. So then when we have a resource like this, when we set, how many appointments could use this at the same time. If it is a sauna, in this case, it could be that, maybe this sauna has a capacity of 6 people who could actually have an appointment booked and use this at the same time. It's not unreasonable. So we can then specify that. So rather than, as we had it before, it was, just one per appointment. And as soon as one appointment was booked, the resource was taken. Now we could actually book 6 appointments against this resource before it says that it's full and it cannot be booked anymore. So let's add that. And then we can go into schedule. So we could say always available like we had on a room, but just to make it a little bit more interesting, we can say that this should only be available on specific days. And maybe if it's a sauna, we need, we don't want to have it switched on all the time, but we want to have certain times when we have this turned on. So maybe, maybe this is on, let's say for this exercise, just on Tuesdays. So we could say every Tuesday, repeating schedule. So on every Tuesday, I want to have this this resource available, and then you can add the schedule for each Tuesday. So let's say from, maybe this is we could do, so we have a morning from 7 to 11 a.m. Or maybe we could, so let's just leave it at that. Or I might, we add another one just to have a bit more to play with. So from 7 to 11, and then maybe I'll also add from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. as well is when this is available. So every Tuesday at this time, we will have this available and switched on so people can book and use. Okay, so we've now created this resource, the sauna. What we need to do next is to then create our service that is the specific service that someone would book that uses this resource. So in order to do that, let's head over to our services. And we'll go into the services list. I don't have a sauna service in here right now, so no, I don't. So let's add a category for sauna. So we'll have that service category in here, and we can then add a service which might be, what did we call it? The steam room, maybe like 60 minutes. So you can book that, which has a duration of 1 hour. 1 hour. And the setting that is important to be aware of now, when we're creating basically a resource that can be booked, it doesn't require any member of staff for this to be, for someone to use this. We'll need to go to additional options here and toggle this one on where it says requires no staff member, so only a resource. So make sure you have this one toggled on. Otherwise, you basically need to book a person as well as the sauna. But in this case, we only want the resource to be bookable. We need to give it a price. So let's give it $50. And we can create that. Naturally, we could add more in here as well. So we could add maybe the steam room 90 minutes. There you go. So if we wanted some variations on that, that will cost 60 instead and requires no staff member. Okay. So now we have a couple of sauna services available here that we can book. And just to come back to the question that we had earlier, like, can this be booked online? So what you just need to be mindful of is that you switch on that the service is actually available for online booking. So you will need to toggle that on in order for that to be showing up in your online booking. And I'll do that for this one as well. Then now clients could go to your online booking and book this particular room. I can show you quickly just what that would look like actually. So this is just a demo site that should be connected to this account. Let's see. So let's see. I did add this one. Okay. So I have the category name available on booking on. Okay, let's not spend time on that, but that's basically where you need to enable it, and then people can book it via your online service. But let's go in here and I'll just add an appointment just to show you what this looks like. So let's say we now have the steam room here. So, this can get, if you have a lot of resources, it can get quite long. Mostly what you will probably do is to go into saunas if you want to manage that, and you'll see the ones that are available. We can see now that, and actually on this one, you can see we only added it for Tuesday, right? So it's not showing on Monday, but if I go to Tuesday, it's showing up with a limited time. So you can even manage it in here, or you use filters. If you just want to manage your saunas, you can just do it straight in here. But let's say then we wanted to book someone in for it. So I'll just click on that. I'll book myself in. Okay. And, so I basically book it on the stream room. So if I go into services, you'll see that there's not many services that I could book in here, except, or have I? Did I not assign the service? So hang on. No, okay. So good that we did that mistake. So basically we need to go into settings. So I haven't basically attached the resource to the service yet. So I need to go into settings, services, and go into the sauna, and I need to go into resources and then add the resource requirement, which would be saunas, and let's say the steam room on this one. And let's go into resources, add the resource. So basically we need to, of course, add the resource to the service here. And we can say the steam room specifically. Now that should be showing up better. So if I go into the calendar now, I go to the steam room, I'll book myself in. If I look at available services, but you see the steam room is now available. So that's basically what can be booked in here. So we want to book a 60-minute appointment for 2 hours. And, that's just how we book that on the resource. You could actually do it like when we looked at the other services before that was a service with a resource attached. We could take the same approach. So we basically go to the massage room, we click on the schedule here, we book let's pick this one. We could book a Swedish massage, but on the resource, and then as the next step, basically select the member of staff, and we see, okay, so Stella is available. So basically just going, the other way around and booking from the resource and then adding the member of staff instead of going to member of staff, adding the resource. We could do that as well. But yeah. So yeah, that's how we set up resources that should be bookable as a service. And it should also be, so for the online booking now you see sauna, so I didn't have it enabled before. And if I go in here and I pick now the steam room 60 minutes, you'll see that there's not, the regular step that we have where we pick a member of staff. It just goes straight into time because there's no staff to be selected. And we can just pick a time that we want to book that resource. All right. So looking at the chat, I see there's quite a few things coming in. So will we be able to set a provider to a default room? So you would have if someone books with a certain member of staff, it would be that room. No, so we wouldn't be able to do that connection unless that basically we had a specific, a unique service for that member of staff that then has a specific room attached to it. I think that's probably how we would need to do it. But we cannot like make a connection between a member of staff and the resource. So it would need to be like its own service in that case. Actually, I see there's quite a few questions. So let's just go through so I managed to cover it all, and then we can come back to the end so that we have time to make sure we cover it all. And because I want to show you the final use case. So we've talked about service with the resource. We talked about just having the resource as a service. The final use case that I wanted to show you is also when we want to use resources to manage. You schedule resources to manage service availability. So this is really helpful. Like obviously, like if you have because we've seen that already on the resources, right? That you can set a schedule like we did on the sauna. So if you have a resource that have a limited schedule, services that are dependent on that resource will then be obviously dependent on that being available. So that will help control when that service can be booked. Now, you might have services that doesn't necessarily have a specific resource as such there, but you still want to be able to control when that service can be booked. Maybe you have injectables that you want to be, we only want to do them on Mondays, on Tuesdays, and things like that. We have, because it's a bit of setup work or something, whatever reason is, but you have like certain days a week where you want to have that booked. So we can then create like some virtual resources to achieve the same thing. So let's do that. And I'm going to create like a resource group here. So let's call this like day specific resources. Great. So what I could do is just create a resource that I maybe call Monday. Oops. And I can create another resource that I call Tuesday. What we'll do with these resources is basically just giving it a schedule. So giving it a schedule so that this is only basically the Monday resource. So as soon as we attach the Monday resource to a service, that means, it will need to be booked on a Monday. So we just give, the repeating schedule every Monday. We'll just have from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. That's when the Monday resource is available. We can go to Tuesdays, and I would set the specific days when this resource is available, the Tuesday resource. Edit that, repeat, and then add a schedule. We'll do, let's do 7 a.m. I think that's roughly the opening hours. 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So now we have Monday, Tuesday, which basically is just a virtual resource that has availability only on that specific day of the week. If we go back to like the quantities, what I also would do, because the way we would use them is just like, we just attach the days that we want a certain service to be available on, that we should be able to book that on. And we might do that on multiple services, right? So I wouldn't have any limit. So this is when kind of this comes in handy, using this no limit on appointments. So as many appointments as we want can use this resource. And we can go to Tuesday and we say no limit of appointments as well. So we have that set up. So if we now have a service that we want to only have available on, let's say, Mondays and Tuesdays. So let's go into services. Maybe we could take, maybe, I don't know, it doesn't really matter which one could require a bit of special setup. We could do maybe the permanent makeup. So if we were to do microblading, we can then on the microblading service, say under resources, we add some resource requirement, meaning that the day specific resources will select the specific days. So if we had added, we could have added a full week here, right? And just say, as long as it's either Monday or Tuesday, then this service can be booked. Okay. So it's just kind of like how we can use these resources in like a virtual way, even if it's not a real resource, but to control the service availability. So let's do that. And if I then head over here, So on a Tuesday, we'll see that this resource is available. The Tuesday resource, if I go to Monday, it's the Monday resource that is available, meaning like if I want to book if I go to the Wednesday when this is not available and I try to book the permanent makeup service of the, what did we, sorry. So if I just add a sample and we do microblading, right? If I try to do that now on a Wednesday, it will say that there's nothing available. We cannot book the service. Okay, so we would need to then book that in on a Tuesday when that day is available. So picking one, microblading, oof, and now it finds, okay, so Tuesday is available and this service can be booked. Okay, so that's how we work with that. What I would say, like, as you start to see, as we add in more resources, and especially as we start adding these like virtual resources, maybe like the Monday, Tuesdays to control the availability, this can get quite long. And, when we start looking at our filters, there's a lot showing here. So as we start working with that, what I would recommend as well is under the resources, let's go in here. You can also set, so for example, these day-specific resources, if you go into advanced, you have this show in calendar view. We can switch that off. So by doing that, it just makes it a little bit more cleaner. So if we add this like Monday, Tuesday, and so on, you will not see that here in your filters. So it's just happening in the background, basically making sure that these services are booked when they should be booked or not. So that is service availability. So you can add that on specific days. You could add the same thing, like if you were to do like a Valentine's Day, activity with a service that is only available on Valentine's Day, for example. We could also do that, just add a specific, add a resource that is only available on a specific day on the Valentine's Day, and then add our Valentine service or something and attach that, so that service can only be booked on that day, for example, if we run activities like that. So there's some clever ways there how we can use resources as well to control our scheduling. All right, so I think I covered quite a bit there in some time. I see some questions has been coming in, so I'm gonna I'll stop sharing my screen for now, and I'll go to the chat here to see if we have some questions to cover before we end. And so we covered that one. So Vanessa is saying, just want to clarify, we have 2 wax chairs for eyebrows, but we can also do them in our 2 rooms. Would we put eyebrow waxing as the resource and say 4 can be booked? So you could do that. You could do that. If there's no need for you to be able to separate them or like where they booked, you could do that. You could just have like one resource with a capacity of 4 to make sure that it's not booked more than 4 times, and then you just basically pick where they go. So that's absolutely one way of doing it. The other way would be to, like as I was doing with the rooms, just adding the specific ones in. You could do it that way as well. So both would work. By having them separate, it just gives you a little bit more control of which particular resource is it that is being booked. Otherwise, you wouldn't really know that. You just know that the capacity is enough. So Jennifer is asking, what if you have a service that can use 2 types of resources, but you want the system to prioritize using one type of resource over the other? For example, the appointment can use a bed or a room, but you prefer it to choose a bed and only use the room if the beds are full. So currently, we don't support that prioritization. I haven't actually, because it becomes really complex from a system point of view. So you cannot actually do that, but you would. So we cannot do prioritization basically. So it will pick randomly, like if it's available, it will pick it, and then you would need to go, like I was showing on the calendar. If you see that you have one booked in, and you want to kind of free up that, you would need to change which room is it, or change that to a chair instead of a room, or in your case, to kind of free up that resource. But there's no prioritization support in which resource it's picking. It just becomes quite complex actually, having that. So that's why it's not in there. But great questions, and great questions coming through here. So Matthew is asking, can you assign someone to a specific resource on specific days, aka person uses room 1 on specific days, and that dictates what type of appointment they can be booked for? So we cannot connect a resource to a person. We connect resources to a service. So if we wanted to achieve something like this, my thinking would be that we need to have a service basically for that specific person. We cannot connect a resource to a person. I think that's what we're trying to do, but we're connecting the resource to a service. Okay. So Mia is asking, we have a stylist who wants to add extra days in the spa for her services. Would we be able to add specific services on specific days only for spa bookings? Online now, her salon and spa bookings show on each day, but we would love to have an option to open up specific days for only spa services, not her salon services, if that makes sense. So just to make sure I understand the question as well. So you could absolutely, and that's kind of what I was showing you, right? How you can control that certain services are only bookable on certain days. So we can do that. So maybe that was answered as I was kind of going through that example of how you can have, control the days the services are being booked. Where complexity comes in, which is similar to the question we had before as well, is if you had a member of staff as well, and we cannot really connect the member of staff to a resource, but it's the service. Okay. And we see, does always available for a resource mean always available within the business hour or literally 24/7? It literally means 24/7. So it means 24/7. So, it makes sense if you have, because typically, like if you have a service that is being bookable with a member of staff, that member of staff will have a schedule, right? And when you can book it is really dependent on when a person is available. Like that's how we would normally work. And then if you have the resource available 24/7, then that's fine, right? I think it becomes more when you have the resource being bookable and you detach it from a member of staff. That's when you want to then go in, and like we did on the sauna example earlier, and actually give that particular resource a schedule, which is within your opening hours and whenever you want that to be bookable. Okay. Great question, Christian, or Christina, sorry. Another one, did I hear correctly that we need to inform Mangomint once we set up and allocate our resources? So any previous version of allocated resources by Mangomint staff can be turned off? Correct. So for those of you who have been working with resources in Mangomint before, and you've had the help of the Mangomint support team to kind of set that up for you, this, even if you start working with the new resources, that will not make, you can start setting everything up and you can assign it and everything, but the current version, the old version that you're on of the resources will take precedence over that. So you would need to be in contact with the support person at Mangomint in order for them to kind of just make sure that everything is okay, and then we move you over to the new one. So you would need to have that conversation. Again, they should be reaching out proactively, have already started. If not, make sure you just, ping us and we'll make sure to help you there. And if you help, if you need any help in any of that transfer, we're available to support you. Will we still have the capability to override an appointment if a resource is not available? Yes. So we can still force that in. We can still book. We will get the warning, and when you book, you will get the prompt saying okay, this resource is not available. Do you want to still book it? You will get that, but you can still, say that, yeah, I want to override it and double book it. Great, makes sense. Thank you. Is this a subscription add-on? How much extra does it cost? No, it's not. So, resources is available on all our plans. So it doesn't cost anything. to use this, and I'm really excited about it. And the feedback we've been getting is really positive, and I think it's really cool, like how visually you can work with your resources. I've personally not seen anything like it before, so I didn't think I could get excited about resources, but apparently I can. And I hope you guys feel the same, and that you will start using this in the business. So thanks a lot for the attention today, and just for your awareness as well. We run webinars like this basically every week. Today we're focusing on a new feature, but we have our feature spotlight webinars that we run on a weekly basis, where we zoom in on one part of Mangomint, try to share some tips and tricks so that you can get the more value out of the tool and that you're already using. So stay tuned for those. You'll find them on the webinars, resources webinars on the Mangomint website. So and I see that, please send the recording of this webinar. Yes. So all the webinar recordings, you'll find them also on the Mangomint website. Just go to resources webinar. We're storing them there as well, so you can go back and look at past webinars as well when I talk about other things like reporting and whatnot. But that's where we store them all, so you'll be able to find them there. All right. Thanks a lot for your active participation today. This was great. I hope you're as excited as I am about the new resources. I think this is really cool. Thanks for all the participation and for all the questions. Just seeing if there's there's still questions coming in, maybe. Okay, so if there's questions coming in now as we close, or reach out to support, we'll make sure to follow up on any questions that will come in after this. Have a beautiful rest of the day, and I look forward to seeing you again soon at one of these webinars. All the best. Have a great day. Bye, everyone. Bye, George, Taylor, Casey. Bye, everyone.